Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So something I've only recently noticed about the Twilight movies, and I can't believe I've only noticed it now, is the fact that they are quite PG. And I remember looking through the movies for scenes where vampires actually bit humans, or some bloody gory scenes, and they are few and far between, especially the first two movies. There's that scene with Riley in Eclipse where he's trying to control the newborns, and then maybe the final Alice Vision battle scene in Breaking Dawn that didn't actually happen. But in terms of good old fashioned vampires drinking human blood and it dripping from their mouth, it's practically non-existent, which confirms that Twilight is indeed PG. Well, PG-13 is the official rating. Now, this made it quite difficult to tell the origin story of Rosalie Hale, which is, of course, today's video topic. Now, I'm pretty surprised that they even featured her story as heavily as they did on the big screen, as it covered extreme violence, mutilation and gang rape. 18+ rated topics if you ask me. Now, the movie obviously does leave a lot out. Quite a lot, so that's why I'm going to cover it all in today's video. Rosalie's dark backstory. So just before I continue guys, this story is pretty dark, pretty grim, and one of the darker sides to Stephanie Meyers' writing. It opens up a different dynamic to her characters. She's often said it herself in interviews that her darker writing comes from what mood she does be in the day she was writing, that she doesn't have a technique. It's just down to her own emotions that dictate outcomes for her characters, which I think is a really natural form of writing. So, Rosalie is not exactly a straightforward character. She has a lot of issues. She's not really that nice. She's jealous and she can be self-centered. She's very vain and was so even in her human life. So let's look at her human life to start with, as the circumstances that leads to her transition into a vampire are crucial from what happens in her human life. Now, Rosalie was born into a moderately wealthy family. Her father worked at a bank and was able to maintain their monetary wealth during the Great Depression, which was ravaging the United States. Her mother was a housewife, and together with her father were social climbers, always trying to elevate their status. Rosalie as a human was absolutely stunningly beautiful. She received compliments all of the time, and it did of course fuel her womanly ego. She enjoyed the compliments as many of us would. One day when her father forgot his lunch, Rosalie was sent by her mother in her best dress to drop it off to him at a bank, and this is where she encountered Royce King II. Now, Royce was immediately stricken by Rosalie's beauty, highlighting how her eyes were like violets. He began sending her roses and she happily accepted them. A courtship began, and before she knew it, the two were engaged after attending a ball. The issue was that Royce hardly spent time with her. He was always busy working at the bank, and after some time, Rosalie began to question her relationship with a man she barely knew but was set to marry. After visiting her friend Vera and envying her family status with her loving husband and beautiful baby boy Henry, Rosalie left her friend's home, having serious doubts about whether to continue moving forward with Royce. As she walked home, alone with her thoughts, she noticed several drunken men hanging about at the side of the road, but ignored them until she heard her name called. It was Royce, her fiancé. As she walked over to him, Royce initially, playfully, grabbed her, bragging about her beauty to the boys, that his future wife was stunning. "What did I tell you, John?" Royce crowed, grabbing her arm and pulling her closer. "Isn't she lovelier than all your Georgia peaches?" The man named John was dark-haired and suntanned. He looked her over like she was a horse he was buying. "It's hard to tell," he drawled slowly. "She's all covered up." Royce, still holding Rosalie tightly, shouted, "Show him what you look like, Rose." He laughed again, and then he tore her hat out of her hair. The pins wrenched the hair from the roots, and Rosalie cried out in pain, something they seemed to enjoy. the sound of her pain. As she began to panic and resist, Royce beat her into submission as the other men held her back, incapable of defending herself. Every time she tried to fight, she was beaten heavier each time, until there was so much blood, she had no idea what part of her body it was coming from. Each of the men that accompanied Royce on the side of the street that night all had their turn raping Rosalie, as all the fight she had within her was beaten from her before the gang rape had even begun. After Royce and his friends were done with her, they left her there to die in the street as they walked away, Royce joking that he would have to be more patient with his next choice for a wife. Rosalie felt the snowflakes land on her skin as she waited to die, accepting her fate and wanting to be anywhere than where she was at that exact moment in time. As she lay there, Carlisle Cullen, who lived in the same town, was immediately drawn to the overwhelming smell of her blood, knowing it was blood loss as the scent was so strong. He found Rosalie and took her to safety. She felt herself slipping away as the pain began to dull. She was warm and she was ready and happy to die. Moments later, she felt a sharp pain, like a knife, cut her throat, her ankles, her legs, her wrists. It was all over and it intensified as it went on. Rosalie recounts the experience with Carlisle when she says, "I begged him to kill me. When Esme and Edward returned home, I begged them to kill me too. Carlisle sat with me. He held my hand and said that he was so sorry, promising that it would end. He told me everything, and sometimes I listened. He told me what he was, what I was becoming. I didn't believe him. He apologized each time I screamed." As the transformation completed, Rosalie finally listened to Carlisle's words that she was a vampire, and when she looked in the mirror, she was delighted with what she saw, as her beauty was now enhanced far beyond what she thought possible for a person to look like. Despite all that had happened, Rosalie was still a very vain, shallow person. In fact, she only recognized Carlisle and Edward because they stuck in her head for being more attractive than her when she initially saw them around town. She immediately had her sights set on revenge. She wanted vengeance against the 5 men who had brutally raped and beaten her, and with her new powers, she wiped them all out, one by one, until there was only Royce left, hoping the news of his friends' deaths would rattle him beyond belief, to the point that he couldn't even function as a human being anymore. When she finally got to Royce, her plan had worked. He was a shell of a human, waiting on whatever that took his friends to come for him, knowing it had something to do with Rosalie, but not what kind of Rosalie he would expect. She arrived at Royce's apartment, killed his 2 security guards, and finished Royce off without spilling a single drop of blood. By that statement, I'd assume she had broken his neck or something like that. Same goes for the other guys too. Rosalie was very proud of the fact that she had never tasted nor tried human blood, claiming to have a better record than even Carlisle. Things got better for Rosalie when she met Emmett, who she says is her true soulmate, and the two often break away from the Cullen unit every couple of years or so to live alone before eventually returning to the family. And there you have it, everyone. That is today's video on the dark backstory of Rosalie Hale. Thank you so much for watching. Comment down below on what video topic you'd like to see next. The werewolves or the shapeshifters from Twilight are next up. But thanks for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you all very, very soon.